Hi everyone, today I wanted to show you a recent game I played in which I was faced with an unusual opening shock to one of my most solid black systems, the French defence Fort Knox Variation. Play started d4, e6, e4, and we reached a transposition to the French with d5. Here my opponent played knight to d2, entering something known as the Tarrasch variation of the French. I captured here, going into something known as the Rubinstein variation. And now I play bishop to d7, and this enters something known as the Fort Knox variation. Here I'm looking to get my bishop to c6, getting rid of the problematic bishop that is often associated in the French, and looking to maybe exchange it off in the future with one of the knights on e4, or if the other knight develops onto f3, trying to exchange it there. My opponent played knight to f3, bishop c6, bishop d3, knight to d7, and here we reach a standard position in the Fort Knox. Here I'm looking to try and get the knights to f6, the bishop to e7 and castling, where I have a very solid position. White on the other hand though will have comfortable development as well, and often in terms of the theory for this position, white does get a small edge due to the fact that he has more space, slightly more pieces developed, and a greater control over the centre. So here my opponent castled, and I played the move knight g to f6, so immediately putting pressure on the e4 knight. Now in terms of actual theory and what is played here, usually white will move the knight to g3 where it can no longer be captured, bishop to e7, rook e1, castles, and c3. And with this move, white shores up his centre by playing c3, helping control over the d4 square. And white just has a small advantage here. He has more space, more control of the centre. Black, on the other hand, as you can see here, is a little bit congested with his pieces. It's a little bit more difficult for him to develop and create any plans from this point. So quite often, sometimes black will just simply capture here on f3, and after queen captures on f3, a move like c6 can be played, where the queen will be looking to develop maybe along this diagonal, and then the rook's coming to this square, these squares, to try and look for equality in the game. Let's go back. But instead of this, my opponent played an interesting novelty. He in fact played knight e to g5. Now with this move, I immediately thought that this must be an inaccuracy. Surely white is going against opening principles by moving a piece more than once, and surely this square g5 is just simply misplacing the knight. So at this point I did wonder, why don't I just play the move h6? But here in fact white has an excellent opportunity to go ahead in the game. I wonder if you can spot the next move that white could possibly play here, if I give you just a moment to pause the video to have a look. So here white can play an excellent move, knight captures on e6, and after the move, or the forced move, f takes on e6, now bishop can come to g6 with check. The king, his only move, will have to go to e7, and you can see here black has a number of problems. Okay, he is up material here, but he has pieces that are going to be very difficult to develop in the future. His rook on h8 is completely useless here. His bishop can't do anything either. And white has, I would say, a very easy game here. He'll be looking to maybe get his rook to e1, his queen to e2, and be putting a lot of pressure on the black king. So in this position, I played the move bishop e7, looking towards trying to castle and continue with my systematic development. However, I was now shocked by my opponent's next move. Knight captures on f7. Well, in this position, my only move that I can play is king captures on f7, and now the knight came to g5 with check. And what I didn't realise with this excellent move is now white is threatening to capture my pawn on e6, which is now unprotected due to the fact that the knight sacrificed itself on f7. And I've got to be very careful in this position. If I was to play moves such as king to f8, this would immediately lose to this move. If I was to play the move king to e8, this also doesn't do particularly well, as now after knight captures on e6 attacking the queen, I then would have to play something like queen to c8. White can capture the pawn with check, and white just has an excellent position. He's recovered the cost of his knight and is wrecking black's position. So instead of this, I did king to g8, really I think the only move in this position. But of course white can still capture on e6. I played queen to c8, really the only move here, and my plan here, as you can see with the arrows, is I wanted to get my knights to the odd square f8 to try and exchange off in this position, since I know from playing in cramped positions or playing in positions where I'm up materially, I should try and exchange off my pieces as much as possible. Here now my opponent played queen to e2, and now is threatening to capture one of my pawns on either g7 or c7. In this position now I played the move bishop to d6, trying to get out of that threat, but of course in the process wasting a tempo. As you know, I earlier developed this bishop on e7 and had to develop it again, or move it again I should say, to d6. Now my opponent played rook to e1, and once again I wanted to show sort of what my main plan here. My knight wanted to come to f8, bishop maybe to d7, and then looking to try and exchange some pieces. My knight came to f8, his bishop came to f7, and as you can see here he's now threatening another piece. Once he moves the knight he'll be getting a tempo on the queen. So I had to play the move bishop to d7, blocking that, but again he's opened up another threat here of trying to move when he moves his knight away, attacking the king with check. So in this position I had to exchange, but after rook takes on e6, white has an excellent position. White is now threatening, if he is to get his way, the move rook to e1, which would be checkmate. So if I was to do a move such as a6, let's say, this would lose immediately to this move. So I had to do something about my king, and in this position I played really the only move, king to f8, getting out of the pin, but now white has an excellent move here. He captures on f6, and after g takes on f6, he now develops his bishop to h6, an excellent move. And really the only move I can do here now is king to e8, and now he develops another piece onto an open file, his rook onto e8. And in this position I'm forced to play the move king to d8. Just going back one move, if I played the move bishop to e7, this would be losing, as white has an excellent move here, queen to e2, threatening to capture the bishop on e7 and also threatening checkmate on h5. So if I was to play moves such as, let's say, d8, protecting the bishop, he has this checkmate in one. So in fact black would have to sacrifice a bishop here in this position, but of course would be in a losing position from here. So after d8, we entered an interesting point of the game. My opponent was, in trying to find all these excellent moves, he was using up quite a lot of his time. Now, for the actual time controls of this game, we both had 75 minutes to make 35 moves, and after the 35th move, 15 minutes would be added on to our clocks, and then 15 minutes would be added on every 7 moves after the 35th move. So in this position, even though we're at move 19, my opponent had only 15 minutes left. I myself had still 27 minutes left on my clock, so I had a significant time advantage over my opponent. This can perhaps explain his next move, which is a clear blunder, and that's the move bishop to e6. Not a great move, since now it allows me to capture on e6 and exchange off some of the pressure. Going back, when we looked at the game after we had played it, one of my teammates actually pointed out this excellent move, bishop to g7, forking both the pawn on f6 and the rook on h8. And what can I really do here? I can't play a move such as rook to e8, as now white can capture the pawn on f6, and after the bishop coming to e7, the queen can come to f7, and now black is in a losing position. He has all these pieces attacking his bishop, and there's not a whole lot he can do here. In fact, from this position, white has a checkmate in 13. In fact, actually, black would have to play moves such as c6 to try and escape for a little bit longer, but in fact, white will be so far ahead here from this position due to his activity of his pieces creating this dominant position for him. So, going back to this position then, really the only testing move that black can play is the move bishop takes on f5, but now white can simply recover back his rook, and he can now threaten things such as queen going to g8, and then maybe getting his rook into play, let's say. So there's a lot of different threats that black has to try and parry. So in the end, what happened in the position was my opponent played bishop to e6. I then captured on e6. In fact, actually, a little bit of a better move here would have been rook to e8 first, as going back here after captures, which is what I did, capturing the rook. Here I should actually play queen to d7 with the idea of maybe getting the rook, the king to a bit of more safe position, and then thinking about maybe getting my rook across here, because I played e8 here. Although it looks like a very strong move, white can actually get a check on the king and then start putting in these annoying checks on the black king. But instead here my opponent just played another bad move. In fact, to be fair to him, he did have very little time on his clock, which probably is a big factor when you're playing in chess. When you start going down on time, it's very difficult to make rational moves, and you can kind of see why he played the move here now, d5. Not a great move, as now it allows me to capture the rook on e5. After he captured back with his own pawn, I now put my king onto e7, and as you can see here, this pawn on e6 is now lost. The game actually continued. Queen to e4, I captured back on e6. He now played queen captures on h7. I played queen to f7, blocking the check. He now tried to throw another check in, and I just simply played king to d7. He now played the move bishop to e3, trying to stop that threat of the rook coming here, attacking the queen, and then also threatening mate. But I played here now queen to h5, attacking both the pawn on h2 and also threatening checkmate. In this position, he in fact blundered the best move he should have played, really, although he is quite far behind in this position now, is to play the move g3. But instead he played h4, thinking that that would stop the checkmate, but in fact he missed the queen on d1 checkmate here. So really this move, knight e to g5, is definitely an interesting novelty that white can pull against black. As we've seen in this position, although I managed to pull off the victory in the end, white certainly does have a very powerful attack on the black king. So next time you're faced against the Fort Knox Variation, or you're playing the Fort Knox, be very wary of this knight coming to g5, as it could suddenly spoil your chances of getting a nice calm position as black.